morning, everyone. I'm going to try to speak loud here so you can hear me. I'm not a speaker today. Can you hear me okay back there, Peter? Yes. Okay, good. I have a guest speaker today, Bill Haywood from Tri-City School. Preaching is going to give us an update and on the lesson. We got to have him. He and his wife Rhonda with us here this morning. And I think you've all, Bill's been here before, you've all heard him speak before, but I just wanted to introduce him. And before I turn it over to him, let's bow down. Father, we're thankful for this day, the blessing you've given us. Thankful for the privilege that we have together here to spend time to learn about your word, to learn about the various works, to promote your word, to spread it, train people to do so. We're thankful, Father, for this congregation. We ask your blessing upon it as we strive to serve you in this community and abroad. We ask that you go with us through our worship today, that it might be acceptable in your sight. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Man. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's good to see all of you this morning. If I could get someone to assist me, I've handed out several of these. Could I get a man to pass these out? If you don't have one, raise your hand and he'll get you one, and I'll tell you about what that's about here in just a moment. And it is an honor to get to be here. We had the opportunity to spend some time with my sister on Friday and Saturday. My sister is Joanne Van Hook. Don't hold that against my sister, but we're very honored to get to be here with you and tell you a little bit about the school. One thing we need in the Brotherhood right now is faithful schools training gospel preachers. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. If you could be opening your Bibles up to 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2, and in just a moment we'll get started there, and kind of a premise for what we're going to talk about this morning. And I'll tell you about those keychains that he's passing out right now. I appreciate him doing that. And there's some more out on the table for you in just a moment. So if you're in 2 Timothy chapter 2, let's start there. Paul would write to Timothy and say, "You therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus." I want to stop there for just a moment. One of the things that we need is strong gospel preachers. Do you remember when Joshua was assuming the leadership for the nation of Israel? Moses had died. Joshua is now taking control as leader of the nation. And one of the things that God said to him repeatedly, be strong and courageous. We've got a lot of men that are preaching, but they're not strong and courageous. And strong and courageous does not mean mean and rude, but we need men who will stand for the truth. We need men who will, in love, preach the truth. I want you to notice verse number 2. "And the things you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." Brethren, we have a mandate to train workers for the kingdom. Every congregation needs to be involved in that task. In the local congregation, that's part of what we do. If you look over at Ephesians chapter 4, we're to be equipping the saints. But also we need to be training others for even greater service in the kingdom. We need to be training gospel preachers. We need to be training individuals that can go out into the mission field here in the United States of America. Hopefully, if I can get to the end, I'm assuming I have till about a quarter till. Okay. Hopefully, if I can get to the end, I can tell you some exciting things that are happening over in Africa right now. But here in the United States of America, we desperately, desperately need to evangelize this land that we're living in. And we need to be putting together mission teams. We need individuals that are trained and ready to go out, not just a gospel preacher, but we need school teachers and mechanics and welders that have been trained so that they can go into an area and they can help evangelize. Notice this, though, and this is really a great premise for what we do at Tri-City School of Preaching and Christian Development. Verse number 3, "You therefore must endure hardship as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. We train gospel warriors. Now, that's not just a cliche, and that's not just a cutesy little thing that we say. We desperately need, in the Lord's church, we need gospel warriors. Isn't it interesting? Paul would say you need to endure hardship as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. I'm afraid that sometimes that brethren think that our schools of preaching, we just kind of crank out employees for the church. We don't need employees for the church. We need gospel warriors who will be committed to preach, teach, and evangelize. And everything that goes along with that, in love, of course. And so that's really what we're about. Now, why am I here this morning? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, there we go. Number one, I wanted to thank you for supporting this young man, Drew Cranwetter. He's from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and this congregation is supporting him while he's at Tri-City School of Preaching. He's an excellent student. He just finished his first year, and he did fabulously. He has a degree, I believe it's Southern Missouri State or Southeast Missouri State, huh? Southeast, okay, SEMO, okay. So he's a graduate from there, has a degree in agribusiness, was converted while he was in college, has a real passion for souls. And when he got out of college, he moved to be close to where his friends were that had taught him the truth, and he was trying to help them evangelize, and immediately began to realize how little he knew, and he started looking for a place to be trained. He called us up, and he checked out several schools, and he called us up, and we talked, and he visited, and he said, I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm going to be a preacher, but I want to be able to evangelize. We said, that's great. We want you to come. We have 3 non-negotiable requirements for anyone that wants to be a student. Number one, they have to love the Lord their God with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind. They have to love the truth so much that they're willing to die for it, and they have to love souls so much that they're willing to sacrifice for it. And he fit that category. Now after a year, he says, you know what? I still want to evangelize, but I think I want to be a preacher as well. And so you've made a great investment in Drew. He is a great young man. He's about to begin his 2nd year, and then after he finishes his 2nd year in the preacher training, he's going to do a 3rd year in apologetics. And hopefully I'll have an opportunity to tell you about our 3rd year program. Also, I'm here to encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing. What you're doing here in the local congregation and what you're doing in other works. I know that you're supporting other men at other schools, and we're grateful for every faithful school that are training men to be faithful gospel preachers. And the reality, and this has to do with the little keychain that I gave you that has a link on it, and that's just a little memory anchor for you to remember. And you might want to use that for your keychain, or you might want to put that link on a different keychain. I have it on my fob. If I have my fob with me, I think I do. I've got that little link on my key fob to remind me that I am someone's link to the truth. I'm someone's link to Jesus. I'm someone's link to the gospel. And everything we do really has to run through that filter. We live in a world that's really messed up. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Jesus would say in Luke chapter 19, verse number 10, I came to seek and to save that which was lost. That was his obsession. That was his passion, and that needs to be our passion. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You have a wonderful track rack out there. You can pass out tracts. You can invite people to services, invite them to gospel meetings. Do as you're doing, supporting men that are going to schools like Tri-City School of Preaching, and we appreciate that so very, very much. And so I just want to encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing. We've been blessed to have some great students come through the school. This is a recent picture here. Right now, we have, I believe this fall we'll have 11 students. We have 2 more that are coming in the spring. Well, we're a relatively small school, but we are growing. And so we average 10 to 13 students, and hopefully enrollment will go up. We've had to do some things about housing. Housing has become very difficult. I don't know how it is here in St. Louis, but the price of real estate's become ridiculous. Just 10 years ago, students could rent a small one-bedroom apartment for $300. Now that's about over $1,000. And so we've had to make arrangements for some housing and things of that nature. Here's one of our classes. Let me tell you about the top 5 priorities of the school, because I think this is very important. I really think this is biblical. I think this is what we're supposed to be about. First and foremost, we are to glorify Christ in His church. Ephesians chapter 3, 20 and 21. Verse 20 says, "Now to Him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, to Him, according to the power that works in us, to Him be glory," what? In the church, to all generations forever and ever. To Him be glory in the church. Our number one job is to glorify Christ and the church. And everything we do at the school has to run through that filter. If we're not going to glorify Christ in the church, we don't need to be involved in it. And number 2 is to take care of our students. And by taking care of our students, that means trying to give them what they need in terms, sometimes they need a swift kick. Sometimes they need some counseling. Sometimes we have to help them raise support. But trying to help them mature into faithful gospel warriors. Taking care of our alumni. One of the problems that we see is a lot of preachers are quitting. A lot of preachers become discouraged, and so we're trying to bolster them and help them all that we can, and then recruiting. And if you know of a young person, a young man that's interested in being a gospel preacher, we would like for them to consider Tri-City School of Preaching. We may not be the best fit for them, but we'd like for them to consider us. And as I'll mention in a moment, we not only train men to preach, but we try to train workers for the kingdom. We do not, let me underline that, we do not train women to preach. However, we have women who have graduated and they've gone on to be great teachers of women and great teachers of children. Oftentimes they're married to gospel preachers and doing a great work in the brotherhood. And then the number 5 is fundraising. It's important. That's the strongest nerve in the body, runs from the hand to the wallet. But it takes money to keep the lights on and support students and things of that nature. So let me tell you why we exist. Somebody said, "I thought you existed to train gospel preachers." That's what we do. Let me tell you why we exist. We exist to challenge the status quo of our godless culture. We're living in a messed up world. We exist to change the world. But now how are we going to change the world? Through the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the power of God unto salvation, is it not? Romans chapter 1, verse number 16. And what do I mean when I say changing lives now and for eternity? 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse number 8, amazing verse. There Paul would say, bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having the promise of what does he say? Having the promise of the life that now is and that which is to come. You don't want to leave this life if you're not a faithful child of God. But the reality is you don't want to live this life if you're not a faithful child of God. The best life anyone could live is that of a faithful child of God. And someone says, "You don't know how messed up my life is." I know this. I know this because the Bible teaches this, and I know this from experience in my own life and working with people, many, many people. Been preaching since 1979. Any life is a better life if it's a Christian life. And we live in a messed up world. And we're in a political season right now. And I've got some very strong political opinions, and I want good people in office and that sort of thing. But let me tell you the ultimate answer. The hope for this nation does not hinge on the next election. Okay, and I have some real high expectations about the next election. But the hope for this nation is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when we forget that, we've forgotten everything. And when I say the status quo, challenging the status quo, what am I talking about? Well, think about the religious trends. In 2022, this is post-COVID. In 2022, the Southern Baptists, and I know we don't look at the Southern Baptists as a pattern. I'm not saying that. I'm just talking about the religious trends in our society. In 2022, the Southern Baptists lost 500,000 members. I mean, they just vanished. The best we can tell, they don't know where they went. The best they can tell, is that they're part of the fastest growing religious group in North America. They are part of the NONE, none, nothing. They're just nothing. They just sit at home. They have no religion. Don't necessarily categorize themselves as atheists. They're just nothing. But you know what? In the Lord's church, this has been an issue too. As a matter of fact, this is a little bit scary. And I'm in this category, so I'm not giving anybody a hard time. But 2/3 of the membership, and this comes from a university affiliated with the Churches of Christ. They did some statistical surveys, and incidentally, they did this back in I believe it was 2017, and their numbers have been spot on. All the trends that they predicted are spot on. 2/3, and incidentally, you may have seen these charts. I got these from Brother Rob Whitaker. 2/3 of our membership in Churches of Christ in the United States of America are 55 or 50 or above. That tells us something right there. If back in between 67 and 1973, we had the strongest numerical growth in the history of the church in the United States of America. 1 out of every 84 people that you would see on the street were a member of the church. Today, we're down to 1 out of every 295. Okay? As a matter of fact, for years we've said we've had about 12,000 congregations. That's dropping rapidly. And one of the reasons why it's dropping rapidly is because we don't have trained workers to help in these congregations. Recently, just a few months ago, back in April, I was in Harrisburg, Illinois, a little congregation there. They went for 2 years with They could not find a man. Went 2 years without a preacher. They contacted a retired preacher who's 76 years old, asked him to come out of retirement. He said, I want to help you. He said, but you understand, I'm 76. I don't know how long I can do this. And they said, please come. He said, I'll come on one condition. You still have to try to find a younger man, and I'll work with him, and I'll try to get him going. Now, God bless him for doing that. But that is typical. I hear one of the saddest parts of my job is getting calls. Do you have a preacher? Do you have a preacher? Do you have a preacher? And we need more than just filling the pulpits. We need to produce an army that's ready to go out and evangelize. How many of you, and you don't have to necessarily raise your hand, but I can remember as a little boy back in the 60s hearing, okay, we're putting together a mission team and we're going to go over here and start a congregation in this area. Sometimes they would even go out. They would have people that would move to a different city to start a new congregation. You don't hear much about that anymore. And that kind of zeal and kind of excitement needs to be brought back where we're interested in evangelizing our local area, but also evangelizing this entire country. This country desperately needs the gospel. If the trends hold up, right now we're about 1.2 million members. If the trends hold up, in just a few years, we're going to be below 400,000. Think about the other trends. And now this is just the status quo. When I say the status quo, there are folks that are just content. They say, oh yeah, well, that's the way it is. Oh yeah, well, that's just the way it is. Somebody has to challenge that. And it's us. We're the link. We're somebody's link. And we have to challenge that. Think about the weird things that are happening in our society today. The sexual perversion, the gender perversion. It's mind-blowing. Some of the things that we see, and we realize that there are people out there that desperately need the gospel. And there's a lot of folks that it's like, yeah, well, that's just the way it is. You know, we need to be loving. We need to be kind. But we need to stand for the truth. And there are people out there who are, and I don't mean this mean, but they're messed up in their thinking regarding gender and that sort of thing. Somebody needs to lovingly say, no, there's a better way. There's a better way. My wife and I, we were at a major event in Asheville. I took this picture over in Asheville. It was a major venue in Asheville. I'd never seen a sign like this. Maybe you've seen it before, and I saw it, and it blew me away. All gender bathroom. And that's the status quo. And there's members of the church now. I mean, for years, excuse me for being so cynical, but this is my experience. For years in the church, there have been a segment of congregations have been saying, don't tell us that abortion's wrong anymore. We're tired of hearing it. Don't tell us that homosexuality is wrong anymore. We don't want to hear it. And the next thing we're going to hear is there's going to be a segment of our congregations that are saying, just, you know what, just let it be. And in the meantime, we have children in our pews that are being indoctrinated through television, through the internet, through schools. But we don't want to hear it in our congregations. Somebody needs to challenge the status quo. So we are all someone's link to the gospel, and that's our philosophy. Now, so that's why we exist. We exist to challenge the status quo. And what we do, there's 4 areas. We train gospel preachers. We have on-campus Christian development through distance learning, and international preacher training. So let me quickly tell you, these are some of our students. I'll tell you about a couple of them. Dale Barger's doing a great work down in Rockwood, Tennessee. I wanted to tell you about this couple. He has been at the Fort Chiswell congregation now for about 18 years. When he went there, they were a congregation of about 30. The last time I was there and I checked with him and they continue to do well, they now have an attendance of about 85 members. They just, and that seems like a lot of growth. But now keep in mind, that's over 18 years. And they'll baptize 4 to 5 a year, get them mature, and they keep on growing. This is one of our great success stories. And now he's an elder there, and they continue to grow. And I'd love to say now they have a congregation of 500, but that wouldn't be realistic. But you know, that's not the norm. The norm is we're thrilled if congregations die more slowly than they've been dying. And so here's another Missouri boy, Drew Leonard. He grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. He came to Tri-City School of Preaching, and he's doing a great work there. Let me tell you about some of our students real quick. This is Justin Haas. This is his wife, Haley. They're both students at Tri-City School of Preaching. Justin had a degree in chemistry and was working for the Eastman Corporation. And he became a child of God while he was in the university nearby. And his wife was a child of God, and she taught him. And the more he learned, the more he said, man, I want to know more. I want to be able to teach others. And he began talking to us. And he had a lot of people that discouraged him at first. Do you realize the job you're talking about giving up? Do you realize you have a good career with good benefits? And, you know, I know all about that stuff. But we need some men and women that'll step out and say the gospel's more important. And he did that. He did that. And he's a fabulous student. Drew Cranwetter, I mentioned him to you already. He's from Cape Girardeau. Let me tell you about this guy. His name is Robert E. Taylor. Sometimes people hear Robert Taylor and they say, Robert Taylor. This is Robert E. Taylor. Robert Taylor was a Baptist preacher for 22 years. And he began to study, and he was just deeply troubled by passages that he could not reconcile. He told me, he said, you know, I could not deal with Acts 22, verse 16, when Paul retold his own conversion experience, and he said, Ananias came to him and said, now arise, and why tarriest thou? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins. He said, I couldn't handle that. And he said, I talked to my Baptist preacher friends, and they said, well, just don't go there. Just ignore that passage. And he said, that just upset me so bad. And he studied more, and he studied himself out of the Baptist church, became a child of God, and was driving a school bus. Matter of fact, that congregation where he was preaching is now a Church of Christ. Many of the members left, many of the members stayed, and we were talking, and he said, I'd love to come to school, but I can't. I said, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. He said, well, I'm too old. I'm in my late 50s. I said, you come to school. And he's still preaching, plans to preach until he dies, and he is doing he is a fabulous preacher. He graduated from our 2-year program. He's going to stay for the 3rd year in apologetics. Just a great guy. This is Jacob Martin doing a great job. He's from Bedford, Virginia. David Alley is retired. He was a mechanic. And when he retired, he said, I've always wanted to be able to have more knowledge where I could teach people one-on-one. We said, come on. Denver Tate just graduated, is preaching in New Tazewell, Tennessee. This is Dennis Smith and his wife, Rachel. They're both taking classes. He is from the Radford, Virginia area. And Nathan Tate. Incidentally, let me tell you about Dennis. He had if you're a golfer, this will mean something to you. But I don't know what the title of the job was, but he's the guy that took care of all the grounds. He was in charge of everything at the golf course, the greens, everything. And I didn't realize that was a big deal. And someone said, man, that's big money these days. And matter of fact, people couldn't believe that he was going to give up that career. And I want to preach the gospel. And so we're thrilled that they're with us. Nathan Tate was an operating room technician, which I didn't even know there was such a thing. Had a good job, good benefits, and everything. Again, matter of fact, Nathan was really exciting because we talked back and forth, and he'd call me up and he'd ask me questions. And he said, I just don't know if I could leave my job. I've got a wife to take care of. And he called me up. I guess it was back in December. And he said, I just want to tell you something. I want to come to school in February. He said, my wife said, you've got to go to school. And I asked him, I said, well, what's going on? He said, all I could think about was I want to be a preacher. All I could think about was I want to learn more so I can teach others. And she finally said, what are you waiting for? We'll make it one way or another. And they've done a marvelous job. He's doing a great job. I don't know if any of y'all know Eddie Kraft. He's one of our instructors and just a brilliant, brilliant man. He came into class one day. This is one of the things we do, just answered questions for the students. That's one of our classrooms right there. Wesley Simons. I don't know if y'all know of Wesley Simons. He's done a lot of stuff for World Video Bible School. And we're doing some recording in our studio with him right now. This is the Acts class, a very popular class. His class, that's one of our classrooms right there. One of the things that we try to do at the school, back in the 90s, before the school started, I was privileged to sit around a table at Burger King in Bristol, Virginia, and we were talking about the problem, needing more preachers, and it's gotten worse since then. And so we started looking at a lot of things, and we began asking questions. And one of the questions that came up was, if Jesus had a school of preaching, and he did, what would it look like? And we realized there had to be the academic side. But there are those John 6 moments where there's some really meaty subjects that need to be dealt with, and you've got to get into the text, and you have to learn the text. But there also has to be a good dose of association. Jesus and his disciples, they associated with one another so that they had those opportunities to say, Master, why do you teach in parables? Can you teach us to pray? Do you realize that the Pharisees were offended? And there's that, not just that instruction in the classroom, but there's that mentoring, discipling that takes place. And it has to be an organic thing. And so we try to give a lot of room for that and a lot of time that we just hang out with the students and spend time with them trying to help them any way that we can. Another thing that we do is we try to give them some real life experience. We do that in a lot of ways. One of the ways we do it is primarily for our lectureship. All our speakers, about 90% of our speakers are either alumni or students. We want them to be involved in that. But also, we have what we call Hot Seat Tuesday. And on Tuesday, we put them on the hot seat, and Wesley Simons will pick a particular false doctrine, and he'll present it to them, and their job is to refute it. And, matter of fact, in that particular picture there, Drew and Justin were new students, and I thought, he is going to scare them to death. And he was putting the heat on them. Amazingly, afterwards, they both said, that's good. We like, and they were struggling. They couldn't answer it, but one of the good things is sometimes for us to realize, to know what we don't know. And so we try to help these students as much as we can in every respect. Also, did y'all have Rob Whitaker here? We had Rob Whitaker. He comes every 2 years to teach our students on evangelism training. And we also have a radio studio. We have a radio program 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's a live call-in radio program. And our students, certain quarters, they're required to be in there in the studio helping us. Sometimes they rotate in and out. We actually have a class on ministry and technology. And so they participate in the radio program. We also have a debate class, and they come into the radio program. One of the things that happens with live call-ins, you learn how to listen, so you actually know the person's position, and you learn how to answer them. We think of debate as something harsh, but it doesn't have to be that way. It is a matter of thinking critically, thinking logically, and that sort of thing. We also have besides the radio studio, we have a video production studio. And in the video production studio, we help some of our alumni produce television programs that they show in their area. We also produce podcasts for our alumni in there. We encourage our students to be thinking about podcasts. I believe it was Brother Jared Jackson. He came out, it was I don't know if you remember, Jordan, reading that article, but it was an enormous number. It was like of Gen Z, they get about 70% of their information about religion from podcast. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I'm an old guy. I'm not that thrilled about podcast, okay? But that's where young people are getting their information. We need good information out there, and we need people producing podcasts for local areas, and the congregation can use that as a link. So we're trying to use that. Also in the studio, we have Brother Simons is doing all his classroom material. We're recording it all. We've worked in close connection with World Video Bible School. They're going to distribute all his material. Daniel is done. It's in post-production right now, which is fairly lengthy process because we have trouble dedicating one person to that. But also World Video Bible School, Gospel Broadcasting Network will be able to use this, and we'll also put it on the internet for free, which will be essential for a lot of small congregations. There's Wesley. Let me tell you about our on-campus Christian development. I need to move quickly, but let me tell you about this young man. And I have a flyer back there. Because of this young man, we developed a program. He was an honors student in high school, graduated early, had 6 months before he went off to university. He said, "Can I attend classes before I go off to university?" I said, "Sure." I was very concerned about where he was going to school. He's going to one of the most liberal schools in the area, Emory and Henry in Southwest Virginia. I beg parents, do not send your children there. I could tell you stories about, no exaggeration, young people coming to me in tears. One young man saying, "I don't even know if I believe in God anymore." I was talking, I don't know if Josh Alley, if you all met Josh Alley. He was an intern over at Forestel a couple years ago. And Josh and I were talking one day, and we noted the fact of everyone that we know that went to Emory and Henry, Matthew is the only one that's faithful and came out unscathed. And so I asked Matthew, I said, "Matthew, tell me what was the difference for you at Emory and Henry?" I was trying my best not to lead him. He said, "Well, going to school at Tri-Cities definitely helped me." He said, "It grounded me biblically." Oh, this amazed me. He said, "You helped prepare me to be a college student," which amazed me because he was an honor student in high school. He said, "I didn't know how to write papers. I didn't know how to do research. I didn't know how to schedule my studies," which really surprised me. But he said, "You grounded me biblically." And he said, "When my faith was challenged, I didn't always know the answers, but I knew there was an answer. I knew of resources that I could go to. I knew there were people that I could call and I could ask them questions. And it never shook my faith when I heard them attack the Bible or attack Christian values, because he said, I knew there was an answer." And we got to looking at that, and we've developed a program. We call it, well, this is the wrong flyer. We developed a program called Link Year. I believe it's out there. I hope I brought the right advertisement for it, Link Year. And the idea of Link Year is a young person, when they graduate from high school, and I realize for some students this is going to be difficult, either graduate from high school or graduate from college, come spend a year with us. And during that year, we've fashioned a special curriculum for them that will get them grounded so that when they go off to college, they'll have special courses. They'll have a good Bible curriculum, but they'll also have some special courses in apologetics, like the problem of evil, pain, and suffering. That is the number one argument that the atheists use and undermines the faith of so many young people, because they can point to all the suffering and say, where's your God? Where's your God? So we do that. Let me tell you about this young lady. This young lady took 2 years at Tri-City School of Preaching. She is a great teacher of women and a great teacher of children. She's married to a faithful gospel preacher, and they're doing a great work over in Collierville, Tennessee. And I was recently in Collierville holding a gospel meeting, and I embarrassed her because I pointed out the fact that she still has the distinction of all of our students. She has the distinction of graduating with the highest grade point average ever. She was a brilliant student, but the beauty is she knows her role. She knows her role is not to teach men. She knows it's not her role to be a preacher. She knows it's not her role to be an elder. And you say, what's so great about that, Bill? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had young women trained in every congregation that could teach other women? Oh, no, you need to look at what the Bible says. Let me talk to you about modest dress. Let me talk to you about this issue. I tell you, we desperately need that. I'm sure you have women here like that. There's the link to your program that I was telling you about. Let me tell you about this real quickly. International preacher training. We did not set out to be involved in international preacher training. We had one of our instructors was teaching a class for the Mosquito River Bible School once a week, which was just training members and was not preacher training. And the elders of Mosquito River in Tanzania asked, could you provide preacher training? Okay. And so we reached out and we said, well, what about Andrew Connolly School of Preaching? They're full, and a lot of these men can't go. I know I'm running out of time, but let me tell you the problem that they have in Tanzania. They have a preacher shortage in Tanzania. This thrills me and it breaks my heart at the same time, because in Tanzania, the church is exploding. And Brother Keith Hovis, who is over our international distance learning, he told me a story about one of the preachers. He gets on his little scooter and he starts traveling. He stops and he preaches for a congregation. He gets back on his scooter and he travels and he preaches for another congregation. By the end of the day, he's about 80 miles away from home. And what happens is this is happening all over Tanzania. And these traveling preachers will come in and they see a man that's growing and maturing, and they say, you're going to be the preacher. And they say, what? You're going to be the preacher. I'll be back when I can be back, because there's just so much demand. And there's guys like this all over Tanzania, and they're saying, okay, we want to preach, but we need more training. And so we've started this. They go to Mosquito River for 3 days, and then they travel back to their area to preach. Actually 4 days. Wednesday, they do practical work in the community. And so this is one of the settings we do. We have 14 English-speaking men that are taking classes right now. Also, as a result of this, I got to tell you this. A local government-run boarding school heard about what we're doing. And they said, could you teach Bible classes for our students? And so now we're teaching, I think 4 days a week now, we're teaching classes for government-run boarding schools, 2 different schools, and we've had to limit it to 100 students a day. It started out 80 students, then about 140 students, then it was about 240 students, then we had a school of 300. Matter of fact, this, what you see right there, the school of 300 students, they said, could you come do a Sunday morning worship assembly for us? The man preaching there is Julius Gasper. He's our director, on-site director. He preaches every Sunday to 300 students at a government-run boarding school. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's thrilling. You said, but you also said it breaks your heart. You know why it breaks my heart? Don't you wish that was happening here? I got to tell you this one thing. There's so much more I need to tell you. I'm about to run out of time. The headmaster told Brother Hovis, he said, the reason why I'm asking you to do this is because I know that the churches of Christ know the Bible, and that's all you're going to teach. That makes my heart explode I'm just so thrilled, but it also just about brings tears to my eyes Some of you remember when folks in the community said that about the churches of Christ here in North America, don't you? And it can be that way again, but we got to challenge the status quo. Quickly, online Christian development. If you want to be involved in this, we've got students all over the country. We have classes on Monday night and Tuesday night. This upcoming quarter, we're going to have 3 different classes. On Monday nights, we're going to have the book of Galatians. On Tuesdays, we're going to have Genesis Part 1, and we're also going to have a ladies-only class. These are also archived during the quarter so that if you want to participate and you say, well, I can't meet at that time, we'll send you the notes, we'll send you a link to the video, and you can take part in that. A lot of different people do it different ways. Some people do it in the privacy of their home. Some brethren get together, and do it together. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. We just had our first Future Leaders Preachers Camp. And so anyway, I'll just stop right there. Got maybe about 4 minutes. So I ran through that really quickly. I apologize for a filibuster, but let me just stop. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? No math, no geography. Do what? Oh, my wife just brought up something very important. The cost to attend. I recently did a segment with Don Blackwell, and he asked me this question about how much does it cost to attend. It is very costly, but all that cost is covered by faithful members of the Churches of Christ. A student can come there. They have to raise their living support, but there's no tuition. They need to pay for their books, but if they struggle with that, we'll help them pay for their books. We ask them to devote their full time to being a student. It's a very, very intense study. And so, I mentioned to you earlier, and this is not a plea for money unless you got lots of money. If you want to bring me a check, that's okay. But I know the strongest nerve in the body runs from the hand to the wallet. But there's a lot of great works that are going on, and we have the money. I know we have the money. And it's not just Tri-City School of Preaching. There's a lot of great works. And we've got to invest our time, we've got to invest our energy, and we need to invest our money in trying to get the gospel out to a lost and dying world. Anything. If you don't ask any questions, I'm going to let you go early, and you're going to have to fellowship.
The problem with the Church of Christ today and why we are dwindling down is that we keep our mouth shut. We do not tell others about Jesus Christ. We do not tell others about heaven and eternal life because we're afraid that we will offend them or will upset them or will cause them some degree of discomfort. And on the day of judgment, our Lord, when we stand before Him, He's going to say, you kept your mouth shut, but I'm not going to keep mine shut. Get thee away from me, I know you not.
That's a frightening thought. That's a frightening thought. And let me just say this, as far as, and we do this a lot. Well, if I say something, they'll never become a Christian. Well, they're not a Christian right now. And they say, well, we got to use the right technique. We just got to try our best. Of course, we've got to be loving and polite, and even then, there's going to be people offended. We do this a lot of times with church discipline. I've had people come up to me in the past. They've got a child that's quit attending, and they say, "Don't go see them." Why? Well, if you go see them, they'll never come back. Well, they're not coming now, and usually that approach never works. We got to try. We got to try, and And of course, we try to be loving and polite and kind and Christ-like. And even then, people are going to get offended, but we got to try. That's a great point, brother. Well, that's the bell, and I need to move before the trap door opens. So thank you so much. And there's some material on the back, and there's some more keychains back there, and I hope you'll use that as a memory anchor.